Good morning and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Ray Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we're so happy you're here. We meet every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern to talk about the business of being an author, whether you are publishing your own books or traditionally published, just all the things that go into being a successful author and selling more books. You're welcome to join us any Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Simply beg on to newshelves.com/FAF. You're also welcome to join us live or email in your questions and catch the replay on YouTube. YouTube is simply New Shelves Books. Today, we're going to jump right in. We do have a question live, and we'll start with that. All right. So the first question is what to say and not say at a book launch. So, Nancy, if you could expand a little bit on what you're looking for. Are you looking for online things to say or not say? Or are you looking for if you're in person? I will say most of the time at a book launch, there's not much you can't say. I mean, if you would say it publicly anyway, I guess I should clarify. But really, when you are in a in-person book launch, it's really meant to just engage with your readers. So I think it's important to think of when you're at a book launch that you're sharing your book, but think of everyone in the audience as friends. I mean, most people don't go to an in-person book launch unless they have some interest in the topic, they like the author, or they're a friend. So think of everyone as friends and kind of introducing yourself in the book. A lot of times, authors will talk about why they wrote the book, or if there are certain themes in the book, that kind of thing is pretty popular to talk about. And absolutely, I hope you love it. If you do, I'd love to hear from you. I think a book launch is a great time. If you're in person, it's a great time to connect with readers and to invite them to connect with you long term. And to build that relationship that can also, often turn into lifelong fans, reviews, and all of that good stuff. Now, if we're talking about online, what can you and can you not say online? The thing about online is that you're going to have to post more often simply by default, by the fact that our feeds go so quickly. If you're going to do a book launch event, you either want to make an event online and invite people to it for a set amount of time, or you want to say it's book launch day and maybe I'm going to post every hour. Maybe I'm going to, with different things, not the same thing, but maybe it's, going to be like, hey, today on book launch day, I'm so excited. I'm going to answer the top 10 questions that readers ask me about my book or ask me about my writing process. And maybe every hour you do a post, or maybe you say, I'm going to do one post, but I'm going to run a contest and it'll be all day. So the winner gets a book at the end of the day. Um, Ask people to share your content. It is one of those things that even if someone's not going to buy your book, and it's funny because I was talking to a group of other professionals in the industry, and we were talking about how a lot of authors expect their friends to buy their book. And very often they don't, either because they're not really readers or they're not necessarily interested in that book. And yes, they want to support you. They don't really want your book sometimes. And it's not because it's not a good book, it may just not be what they read or what they like. So finding ways that you can ask your friends to support you that doesn't mean um, book events, which they may just not be into, or buying or reading your book. For example, hey, I know you're not really into sci-fi, which perfectly cool, but I do have a new book coming out and it really helps me on social media if you just like and share my posts. So if you could do that, that would be fantastic. It's free, it's easy, that kind of thing. So giving people an option of things that's more in their wheelhouse and not expecting your friends and family necessarily to buy or review your book. Because if you do that, many times you're going to be disappointed. You want to build a fan base of readers, not a fan base of just you, because it is different. People will cheer you on, they will want you to do the best of the best, but that doesn't mean that they're interested in that thing that you do. I mean, I have friends and family members who they still go, and you do what? Do you work at a library? No, I don't work at a library because it's just not in their wheelhouse. It doesn't mean that they don't love and want to support me. It means that this is not their thing. And so they try to be supportive as much as they can, but they also don't want to sit for hours watching videos of me talking about publishing. Although God bless my husband, he watches every Free Advice Friday. Which that's where I'm like, oh, you do love me. So I think that's important. Excuse me, at book launch. And then also tell people, go order it. And don't be afraid to ask people to review it. You just can't say, go leave me a 5-star review. Or if you leave me a 5-star review, I'll take you out to lunch. That's against Amazon's terms of service. But you can absolutely say, I'd love if you review this book. It would mean so much to me. Hey, here's a simple way to leave a review and that kind of thing. So you can encourage people to do that. Yes, and that's another thing, David. Brilliant. And I'm glad you brought it up. Your friends who maybe are not your readers or don't want to buy your book because it's not their thing, they could still go into their local library and simply ask the library if they'd be willing to buy the book or stock the book and then check it out at least once. But that's something that doesn't cost them anything, and it also helps you long term because it gets your book into a local library. So that's a great idea. I'm glad you brought it up. So hopefully that helps kind of give you an idea of what you can do on launch day. But if you have follow-up questions, Nancy, just let me know. Let's see. What's the best source for affordable, cool bookmarks? I would say if you are going to buy bookmarks to like give away, I would do branded bookmarks, meaning I would do something that relates to your book. It's got your website branding or it's got your name, your books on it, something like that. And I personally have done a lot on Canva where I just make it on Canva and then I print it through Vistaprint. And that's pretty affordable, especially if you're buying in quantity. I mean, if you're buying 10, the shipping's probably going to cost a ton compared to what you're getting. But if you're buying in bulk, and I will say, do not overlook your local printers. So many people think that a local printer might be more expensive or they don't do things like stickers or bookmarks. And most of the time they do. And I'm not talking like Kinko's, although Kinko's might do it as well. There are a lot of small, independently owned printers who do fabulous work, actually better than you'll get it online sometimes. And it can often be cheaper. And because you can go pick it up, you're not paying shipping on it. So I would be looking, I literally just look, do a Google search, pull up your Maps app and type in printer and see what comes up because that is a great resource. But usually I just make mine in Canva. You can certainly pay people, whether it be on Fiverr or design sites, to design a bookmark for you if you'd like. The most important thing is, even if it's just a funny quote or reading quote, the important thing is if you want it to work for you, it's got to be branded as yours. Get a QR code that leads to your book or get your website, get something that makes it so that it's advertising for you if you're going to do that. See. Oh boy, I'm having a major Ingram Spark issue with their review and release of a Spanish format book. Today makes a month since I submitted files. They said they send in processing and delay due to heavy submissions notifications, but I've never experienced this in 11 years publishing on Ingram Spark. Do you have any intel? Here's the thing, Annette. Have you gone on to their chat feature and asked for a manual review? Because if not, I would absolutely consider doing that. They will update on their platform, like when you log in, and it might say in processing or something like that. But if you haven't yet gone in, and when you log into the account, hitting the support button in the bottom right corner, most accounts in the US at least are now enabled with the chat feature again during specific hours. So the chat feature, though, I'd go on there and I would ask for a manual review, or if they can tell you what the issue is that's holding up the review. I had to do this with a book recently. So their period, I believe, I don't want to misquote the standards, but I believe that their standard is that they will review and process a book within 8 to 10 business days. Now, 8 to 10 business days can, you know, you had in weekends, it can be a little while. But if you're not getting responses within that period, and it sounds like it's been over that, going in and asking for a manual review and specifically asking if they can see why it's being held up. Is there any question you can answer? Is there any paperwork you can provide? In going through it that way, because I have recently had to do that, where I had to let the processing time take. And then I was like, okay, now it's been long enough. Because if you ask too soon, then it's still within standard processing time. They don't really look into it. So I had to go in manually and say, hey, it's been X amount of time. This book has been held up. Is there something I can provide for you? I had a feeling I knew what it was going to be. This book had reversion of rights from the publisher. And so I had a feeling that even though I'd already sent in that paperwork, that they hadn't I sent it in when I uploaded it, not when it was in the review process. So I had a feeling that's what it was. And so I said, here's all that paperwork. It was pushed through and the book was live within 24 hours. So definitely make use of that chat feature. I think that's a good thing. So if they say the same thing, they usually do follow up by email. So one of the things I will say when you're dealing with any chat, Ingram Spark, KDP, anything like that, there are some key tips to getting results. Number one, when you're on the chat, if they say, we'll look into this issue for you, you want to make sure that you ask, thank you so much. When can I expect a response? So you can set your timeline. And if they go over the timeline, then you can, hey, you guys have gone over your timeline multiple times. So ask when you can expect a response. That also usually triggers so that they respond or they follow up by email. When they follow up by email, you're most likely going to be assigned to a rep, especially with Ingram Spark, I think, where you can then hit reply on your email. And then you can go back and forth. So, for example, on the book I just did, I said, when can I expect, a response? They gave me a timeline, and then we got an email. And when we got that email, the email was kind of not helpful. So the response that went back was more specific of, I understand you're in processing. We uploaded on this date. Your standard is this time. Can you give me a time when your review will be over and when I will get an answer? Or can you provide the specific issue that's being reviewed so I can have an opportunity to provide whatever you need or speak to it? And that, because you're asking specific questions, they're then going and looking for specific answers, which means they have to dig into your case a little bit more to answer you. I have found that to be hugely helpful, is that rather than just asking, why is it stuck? Can you push it through? When you start asking for specific questions, they have to go digging a little bit more to just even give you a base answer. And you're more likely to get what you need or know why something's stuck in pre-media or in the review cycle so that you can get it fixed. And don't be afraid if it's been multiple emails, tell them, I would like to speak to a manager above you. I have emailed on this day, and this day. It's in this timeline. And a lot of times they'll push you up the chain with that also. So a couple of tips there. Yeah, the chat feature is available again on Ingram Spark, which is really nice because that was out for quite some time. And it's helpful to not have to send an email and wait. And also, as someone who is often on a call with people or working people, like I'm on a call with people right then or working with them over screen share, it's really nice to be able to get answers right then, not send an email and get it in 2 days when maybe we're not working together or it's not available. So it's a nice feature. All right. How do I put Word doc into an EPUB? I need to be able to do that, and I don't remember how. So there are multiple things you can use to take a Word doc and put it into an EPUB. However, I have found the free feature on Drafted Digital to put your book into a EPUB is probably the easiest. And I do have a YouTube. Whoops. I do have a YouTube how-to video on how to do that. So I will drop that link here for anyone who's watching on Facebook or who um, is maybe watching on YouTube after the fact. I'll link to it in YouTube. But if you're watching on Facebook, then just go to YouTube, go to the New Shelves Books, which is just New Shelves Books on YouTube. And if you type in draft to digital, it pops right up on how to convert an or how to. I'll actually read the title because I can't talk. Convert a Word document into an ebook for free with Draft to Digital is the name of the video, and that is right on there, and you'll be able to access that. And I dropped that in there for you, Kim, so that you can do that. All right, let's see what else we've got. Whoops. I went to a different screen and couldn't figure how to get back. One thing that popped up in my many newsletters that I follow this week was pretty interesting. A couple months ago, several months ago, I had been talking about how it was reported that Penguin Random House was developing AI tools that they were going to be using in publishing. It was something that was honestly a little controversial when it came out that they were going to be using AI because this is, AI is scary in publishing for a lot of people. And so they had talked about how they were going to use AI, and then they said they'd mostly be using it in marketing, and they weren't going to, they were not going to be just feeding things into AI is essentially the gist of it. But they were developing it. And so they have recently actually created, it's kind of amazingly interesting, but they have created essentially their own internal like chat GPT. So to discourage people that work on the PRH books from using things like chat GPT to create synopsis or to create marketing copy and different things like that, they wanted to discourage people, workers, from using different types of AI to get things done. So they created their own system internally that was just meant for Penguin Random House. And they call it PRH Chat GPT. And so that's pretty interesting. And the idea is that it's used for the Penguin Random House employees to kind of work with AI in their daily work to try it out. And what I think is probably the most interesting is that they created it. It's internal. It's something that's built on OpenAI's ChatGPT 4, but with guardrails it's to protect the proprietary information. So they spent this time, this money, this effort into creating their own system. And then what I think is interesting is that when different employees were interviewed, they actually said that either they're not using it or they are using it, but it wasn't very helpful, so they're not continuing to use it. So I don't know if that is more that just AI can only take you so far. You can start with a question with AI, but AI can only do so much at this point anyway. Or if that's because there's not enough training for the employees on how to use AI, period. So you kind of build up this tool for them to use. And then if they don't know how to use AI or they're not familiar with ChatGPT and things like that, then they don't know how to use it, period. How do they make that work for them? Or how do they get that learning curve? So it might be that maybe PRH just needs to do some training on AI, period, before employees use it more or use it more effectively. I'm not sure, but I did think it was pretty interesting that they had invested in developing that a little bit more so that they could play with it. And I guess we'll kind of see what happens there. See. And still in AI news, Harper Collins is now going to be creating some AI audiobooks of some foreign language backlist titles. So they're not using it. To my knowledge, they are not currently going to be creating AI audiobooks for their English titles or for their main titles, but they are creating some audiobooks with foreign language backlist titles, which would give them expanded reach into different markets. And they will be using the company called 11 Labs, if you're familiar with that. So I think that's kind of interesting, as again, publishers obviously have been very wary of AI, and authors have been very wary of AI. Some love it, some don't. We've been over that in here. But I think it's interesting that publishers, while in the beginning were very standoffish, very, whether they were using it or not, I don't know, but they weren't publicly talking about it, I guess. And now they are publicly kind of experimenting with it a little bit to see how they might be able to use it. And I'll be interested to see how that plays out. I would say in the next 6 months to a year, how they start using it a little bit more, what works, what doesn't work, and also how the market really responds to it. I think that will be interesting overall. Let's see. From Marsha, I'm publishing a full color nonfiction book. I've ordered proof copies from Amazon and Ingram. The standard color is surprisingly good, but it's not available in all international markets like Australia. That raises the question of how to handle distribution and pricing in different marketplaces. Price for standard color and higher for premium color. I didn't know it's not available in some markets. Now I know expanded distribution is not available in some markets with different types of books and printing. I didn't realize that it wasn't available at all, even from Amazon. I've honestly never run into that question before. So let me think. You stumped me, Marsha. Look at you. Pricing. See, here's the thing. I guess the thing I would ask more is you can't have on print on demand for KDP and Ingram Spark. You can't have two different print settings or options for the same book with the same ISBN. So I think the first question would be is if that is correct, if you do not have print options in certain areas, then the first question is, are you going to just go with the option that's more affordable, that reaches the most markets? And if it doesn't reach certain markets, so be it. Or are you going to go with the more expensive option so you can reach all of those markets? Or option 3, are you going to go with the cheaper option, which is the standard color in all the markets it can reach, and then do a special edition for the other markets? That would maybe be the premium color, the international edition, that you would have to have a whole new ISBN and book listing for. Because as I said, you can't upload a book to KDP or Ingram Spark and have different print options for different countries. It doesn't work like that. So that would be the first set of questions that I would ask. But I would also double check when you say it's not available in international markets. I'd be checking to make sure, are you looking at, especially on KDP, I'm talking about specifically KDP, are you looking at the first column that gives you the pricing and the royalty for Amazon sales, or are you looking at the expanded distribution column? Because there are quite a few books that are available in Amazon's column that will not, it'll say not available, and it will be in the expanded distribution column. So I double check that, because that doesn't mean the book can't be available. It means it wouldn't be available in expanded distribution, which would mean that if you are even using expanded distribution, it wouldn't be available through Ingram. But if you have your own ISBN and you're uploading to Amazon or KDP for Amazon, and then Ingram Spark for those markets, then you actually wouldn't run into that problem. Now, in some cases, I will say some of the print options on KDP are not available on Ingram Spark. So you do want to make sure that if you are hoping to, especially for a colored book or a picture book, you would just want to make sure that whatever option you choose could be printed on both KDP and Ingram Spark. So I would check that one out. Let's see. Only one person has bought my ebook, which is a colleague who owed me a favor. What is one thing I could do to get it out there? It's on my website. So if you have a new book and it's out somewhere, if it's on your website, how much traffic are you driving to your website? And are you driving the traffic that would be interested in this book? Is the next kind of question. So simply having it on your website may not be enough. Is it up on Amazon? If it is, are you driving traffic to your sales page? Keep in mind that you have to make sure you're driving the right audience there. So are you running ads of any sort to drive traffic? Do you hang out in groups where, and I'm going to be more specific here because Jane, I know that you write cozy mysteries, but this new book that you have is is a nonfiction book more focused on sermons um, and people who speak in faith congregations. And so this is a different market. Your average cozy reader is not going to be buying this. So I think it's really important to think of this is how I usually market my books, but this is different. This is a different audience. So I think it's important that you go and find the audience you want to hit. Do you hang out in groups that are meant for pastors who maybe are talking about sermons or talking about, the struggle of keeping up? Are you in different groups or organizations? Is there an organization you're in where you could ask about advertising, or if they have an email that they could put that out to? Just like you think of your fiction books and you think of reaching readers on social media and things like this, you have to do that with your nonfiction. It's a mind shift. And I see this a lot where people are like, well, I wrote this and now I want to write that. I'm working with a client right now who's written a lot of historical books, like 1900s, 1940s historical books, and now has a contemporary thriller. And my first talk with her was, hey, this is a different audience. Your readers may read that, but we've got to look for your new readers and in new places. So I think that's one of the things you really want to think about is where does this readership hang out? And just putting it up on your website, unless you're driving traffic to your website to pastors or people of faith who are speakers consistently, then it's not going to sell from your website. But something like doing a Facebook ad that's specifically targeted pastors or congregations, people who may be, speaking, would be something you could do. Amazon ads specifically to that market could be something you could do. Again, if you're a part of an organization and you can do it that way, if you're in groups or Discord channels or Slacks or whatever it is with people who are also pastors or who are also speaking to faith congregations, that's where you want to go. So changing your mindset. And yeah, you are starting from scratch because it's a new audience. And that is what is so hard when people do genre hop. It is hard because you feel like you've done a lot to build, but you are starting from scratch kind of every time. And it doesn't have to be drastic. It does not have to be from a fiction novel to a children's book. I mean, it certainly can be, but it doesn't have to be. You could be going from 1940s fiction to a contemporary thriller. Sometimes your readers will follow you over, but not necessarily. Maybe I really don't like contemporary. Maybe I don't like thrillers. I don't like things that are suspenseful and keep me up at night. Um, I do, but that's not the point. Um, it's a different audience. And so you do really have to think of that. And even in your writing process, when you're writing and releasing books, I will often say, when people talk to me about a new book idea, for example, I have a client who has a very successful series. It's going to be a 10-book series. 9 books are out, and he's writing the 10th. And as we're talking about his future career with publishing, and he's talking about a new series, I kind of said, hey, you're in the historical fiction game. So you've got to keep it in this wheelhouse. That's where your audience is based, or else you're going to start from scratch. If you want to move to fantasy, and I do you, but you're starting from scratch and it's not necessarily going to follow over. And so, as you're thinking about what to write next with authors, I often ask them, are you writing because you want to make this a career? Are you writing because you want to try to earn a profit or to push this as a business? Or are you writing because you love it? Is it a hobby? If you're just writing because you love it and you just want to put good books out there and hopefully they're successful, genre hop, go ahead, go all over. But if you're thinking about it as a business, then you have to be a little bit more strategic. And that doesn't mean you can never write outside of your genre, but maybe you publish under a pen name, maybe for the different genre. And we did talk about pen names a couple weeks ago, or maybe you publish, or maybe you write it and you don't publish it yet. Just so many options, but it is that kind of idea of, am I looking at it as a artist who enjoys what I do and it's more of a hobby, or am I looking at it like a business? If I all of a sudden decided, hey, I do a lot of publishing stuff, but I think I'm now going to move into cookbooks. My whole website is going to just all be about recipes and food and all the things that I love to do. Great, but I'd be starting from scratch. And that's a big undertaking. So that's not a business decision that I would make. And you have to decide that for yourself. Not only as publishers, if you're self-publishing, but even simply as an author. Authors have to make that call quite often as well if they want to get another contract with a trade publisher. Yes, that's true. Not all of your audience will follow you from each social media platform. Some people hang out on other platforms more than others. I never was huge on Twitter or X. It requires a lot of constant interaction. And I am best described on social media as not being on it for days or spending hours on it. So Twitter was never my best spot. So I think kind of some people will do that, some people won't. Yeah, so I'd say that if you have a website and you want to share it with your multiple genres, I would have a tab. I would have, KeriBarnum.com, and then I would have a about me section, maybe. Of course, we're going to have that, a contact section, and then I would have um, nonfiction Christian books, mystery novels. Spell it right out in the drop down so people know kind of what path they want to take. Do they want the red pill or the blue pill? And give them that kind of option. I think they can cohabitate if you separate them enough that I can easily find what I want without having to wade through the other genre. Always. All right, let's see. For audiobooks, is it best to publish exclusively on ACX for 3 months, then switch to non-exclusive and add Findaway voices to expand distribution? Or do non-exclusive ACX and Findaway voices from the start? That's a good question. And there are a lot of different opinions about this one, and I've been in conversations that got quite heated. Um, I do know quite a few people who do a lot of audiobooks who will go exclusive on ACX for the beginning period and then switch out. Um, but and you're saying ACX for 3 months. I thought ACX contract was longer than that. I'd have to double check and see if it's changed. But the question I often come down to and ask a lot of people is, if you're going to give exclusivity to anyone in the beginning, are you going to be able and willing to update that 3 months down the road? If you're working with someone who's helping you publish, are you going to be able to get in touch with them to do that work for you? Or do you know how to do it yourself to actually follow up with that? Are you going to be responsible for remembering to take that out of, exclusivity and then upload it elsewhere and then wait for it. What is your marketing like? Is your marketing from the get-go hoping to get libraries? Well, then you need Find Away Voices or one of the other options right away, Authors Republic, something like that. So I think part of it depends on what you're hoping to do with that audiobook launch and the sales, but also look at your overall platform of, are you currently Amazon exclusive with your ebook? Where do most of your sales come from for your print and your ebook? Do you get a lot of wide sales? Do you get a lot of people from Kobo or iBooks? Do you have a lot of library sales? Do you have a lot of print book sales that are actually happening in libraries and bookstores? If so, going exclusive and using your launch period that's only going to reach one customer base may not be your best idea. But I can't know that for you. So I think that's one of the things is looking at what's best for one person may not be best for everyone. So looking at where your sales come from, what your capabilities are, and which capabilities are, and then kind of the idea of, will you follow up with it? And be honest with yourself. Are you going to remember in 3 months to change and update that? I cannot tell you how many authors I work with that I get into their accounts and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot I was going to change that. I was going to update that and I never did, or I didn't follow through with that. And we see this, and sometimes then there's missed opportunities down the way. So I think you kind of have to have an idea of what you will actually be doing and what's best for you, I think is what I'm trying to say, is that what may be best for someone who produces and releases audiobooks for a living, and that's what they're in and day out, and they know how to play the system, and they know how to do it, and they're on top of it, and it's going to be easy for them and not frustrate them to tears. That's going to be different than from someone who's maybe got one audiobook out. And sometimes simpler is better simply because it gets done and doesn't make you hate the process. So those are some of the things I would consider if I was looking at distribution options for an audiobook. What is the best way to work with libraries so they will buy your book? So I love libraries. I have to say that. I do a lot of trainings on libraries actually, because this is something that I am very passionate about. And also I work with a lot of libraries. It's something that New Shelves does. So I think that when we're talking about libraries, keep in mind that libraries are buying books that people need or request. And that's really important, because when you are pitching libraries, it's important to kind of have the idea in your head of, do people need my book? Does it fit the demographic of this library that needs my book? For example, the area I live in has a lot of young children. That is the demographic. I also live by a college. I live in a college town. So if I have a book that is especially helpful for young families, children, or college students, the other demographic is seniors, then being able to go to a library and say, I know that this area has a high population of seniors, and my book on back pain is something that is really in demand and helpful for this audience. And I would love for it to be helpful in your library. Would you consider stocking my book? By the way, I can also come in on a Saturday and give you tips for back pain or something. But introduce yourself. If always start local, go with the people that you can connect with, the library that you can connect with. Many times the library does want to support local authors. So introducing yourself, bringing the book, not to donate the book, by the way. If they ask for a donation, I would usually say give it, but don't just offer a donation of your book right off the bat. Offer to sell them a book. I mean, your book is worth it. Ask them to buy it. but bring in a copy so they can see it. Many times they want to flip through it, that kind of thing, but make that connection. It's all about the connection, either to how your book fits into their system and how you're connected to them. I grew up here. I've been in this library since I was a kid, and I would love for the book to be stocked here. They often do. Some libraries even have like a entire local author section. But also knowing what they want and what they need. Libraries want print books. They do buy paperbacks. It used to be years ago, they really pretty much just went for hardcovers because of the wear and tear. But now there's this really cool plastic coating that can go on paperback books. So they will absolutely buy paperback books if it's something that is popular or they want. Um, know that if you have digital assets like an audiobook or an ebook, they want it to be on overdrive. You should know whether or not your books are on overdrive so you can tell them that. And know that they also are going to go for popular reads. So having people who are local go in and ask for your book is a really good tip for getting your book into different libraries, because almost always if a patron asks for a book, in most cases, unless it's something that the librarian thinks is so outside the norm that no one else would want it or something like that, most of the time they'll buy it and put it on the shelves. So having people go in is a great thing. And also going in with the idea of, this is where you can buy my book. They're not going to buy a book from you personally. They just will not. In many cases, they're not even allowed to. Many libraries have ordering rules where they're only allowed to buy from certain distributors. So they're not going to buy from you directly. They're not going to buy some big publishers, they will, but most of the time they're buying from Ingram or Baker and Taylor. They like Baker and Taylor better because Baker and Taylor does some of the cataloging work for them. But most print on demand and indie authors aren't in Baker and Taylor, which leaves you with Ingram. And about a third of libraries do buy books directly from Amazon if they want them or someone asks for them. And yes, always provide a one sheet. Be able to email in or drop off information, because sometimes librarians are busy. They have a lot of jobs, they're doing a lot of things. So have a one sheet available that you can bring with you that has all the information for your book, the ISBN, the page count, the description, cover of the book. So they remember what it looks like, and some information on you and contact information is also super helpful. And then of course there is the cataloging aspect. So most libraries don't have a dedicated cataloger, the person who's putting all the books into a system. They usually have a librarian who's qualified to catalog, but they also have like a lot of other jobs. So if your book is not cataloged in the major systems, for a print book that would be WorldCat and OCLC. So if your book is not cataloged in those systems, that means that even if they buy your book, it's going to be a little bit of work for them. And sometimes cataloging can take a year or two before your book ever gets cataloged so it can get on the shelf. So highly, highly recommend that if you really would like your book in libraries, I highly recommend that you get a PCIP or a publisher's catalog in publication block. This is a cataloging block that you can buy from a cataloging librarian. I've been using a company called Cassidy. I think it's Cassidy Cataloging, and they will do this for you. It's, I want to say $150, might be 200 to get that catalog. But what they do is they catalog your book for libraries and they upload it into all of the major systems. So if a librarian were to look up your book in your ISBN, all the information's already there, which number one shows them that you're professionally ready to be in libraries. And number two, it means that when they want to put your book in the catalog, they go click, click, click. Okay, it's done. And it's so much easier for them than if they have to catalog it, which is more research and everything like that. So those are things I would highly recommend. And I did also just drop in the chat, I have a whole training on how to work with libraries and what librarians are looking for on YouTube, and it's absolutely free. So I dropped that in the chat for anyone who is watching our replay. I'll try to put it in the description, and anyone on Facebook once again, just go to New Shelves Books on YouTube. If you type in library, it will pop up. It's, it's gotten quite a bit of views, so I think it might even be one of those popular videos that shows up there. But that is a full training that you're welcome to. And again, it's absolutely free. All right, everybody, we're kind of at the end. So I'll take this one last question. It looks like, does it make sense to pay for cataloging for a novel 10 years old? I wouldn't, and here's why. Most libraries, while libraries do often have older books, most libraries try to keep their catalog 10 years old or younger, meaning that they're not buying books. They'll buy a book that's maybe 2 or 3 years old. If it's something that's like a high demand book that doesn't have a lot of additions, like a research novel or something, I don't know. Then they might have it. But most libraries are looking to buy books that are published within the last 2 to 3 years. Sometimes they'll go to 5 years, but they are trying to keep their overall catalog 10 years old or younger. So a 10-year-old book that's been out, unless you're doing a new edition, you're revamping it, you're doing something new, I wouldn't necessarily go and pay for cataloging for that. All right, you guys. Well, thank you for joining me. Like New York City, and all I showed you was a hotel room. But thanks for joining me. Next week, again, we have a special guest, Dr. Lynn Cardula, who will be coming here talking about, imposter syndrome and how to go beyond that with your author career and not let that hold you back. So that is going to be absolutely fantastic. Make sure you come. We will have open Q&A as we always do. So as Lynn gives us those tips and just information, we will be able to ask her questions live as always. So join us here next week. We'll see you then and have an amazing weekend. I'll see you next week.